Too great. The last few weeks I keep getting jumped and beat up and burned and lacerated and left for dead. My friend got his ankle broken by a group of vicious thugs. I'm not in the greatest of moods. How do I remedy that? How do I make myself feel better? The thing that I like to do the most, my favorite thing to do, drop somebody on their head, choke somebody unconscious, kick a hole through somebody's chest. I am happy to have the opportunity to be in action tonight on AEW Dark Elevation.
You're tuned into Too Sweet Elite with Andrew and AJ, presented by the AEP.
Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting edition of Too Sweet Elite. You're here with your boy, All Elite Andy, your boy Big Match AJ, and this week we're joined by a special guest. Once again, we have another guest, and our boy Zevo, a fan of the pod, is joining us today. How you doing, man?
Awesome. Hey, I'm a little VTuber flex here. Here we go. Yeah.
Nice.
All right.
Sweet.
Yes.
Yes, pop the crowd, brother. How you doing? We're glad to have you. The first question I want to ask you, honestly, is how many episodes of the pod have you caught? Like, which episode do you think you started at, roughly?
So, I mean, my AEW history period was like week 2, I was in Boston at the show, right? And I had just seen week 1 like 2 days before that. Mm-hmm. At my job, I work at video game industry. And so my studio, we had it on in our break room, actually, like nice. Lunch. And people were like, oh, there's a new wrestling promotion and all. They just had their first live show. And I was like, they announced that we're coming to Boston next week. And I'm like, I'm going to get us tickets. And then 4 of us went. I grabbed tickets, and it was awesome. And then I've been a fan since. The pod, I picked up that next January or February. Cool. I know it was pre-COVID for sure. And then I went back and like caught all your old episodes, and like, or caught all the old AEW episodes anyway. And yeah.
That's awesome.
I love the pod, and it's great because you guys have sometimes very different perspectives on me, but we agree on a lot of stuff, and so it's cool to like just hear your takes on things, and sometimes you caught stuff I missed, so.
Yeah, it's fun to get just different perspectives and kind of have just a different view on stuff, because I think me and AJ even have varying perspectives on storyline stuff and maybe even the direction the company tries to take sometimes. So we try to generally be a lot more upbeat and I think less critical than we were early on, but we still have a much more of a varying stance, I think, than your general AEW fan even sometimes. So it is cool to bring on people who listen to then get their stance on what we're doing as well. So we appreciate you, man, for listening and jumping on the show with us this week.
Okay, and you started my freaking figure addiction since my Dustin Rhodes has turned into now just behind me, Darby Allin and Orange Cassidy. So I've got 3 now, and they're multiplying. So
that's perfect, man. Figs. We got a lot of friends who are into like collecting wrestling figures, especially. So I'm glad that I've been able to spark that in you a little bit, because that's a really fun thing. And I think it's very cool that AEW is able to get into the figure game much quicker than they've been able to do the video game stuff, because it gave people just another entry into AEW, I think. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I'm psyched about the console game. Like, man, that's going to be awesome.
Oh yeah, me too. That's what got me.
We gotta wait for it.
That's what got me and AJ into professional wrestling really deep. Nice. Was just playing games, and our friendship really sparked off of playing the old WWE games for hours on end when we were younger. So it's grown into this. So yeah, I'm excited for that game as well.
That's rad.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I got started with WrestleMania 2. Like I'm old. And that was my start. And then by the late 90s, like I followed WCW during the wars, and when they went down, I was just kind of like, I think I'm good, and then followed on and off over the years. But AEW got me fully back in for sure. Yeah. It's cool to see a bunch of the dudes I remember from when I was younger, and then all the just amazing young talent is just
You're the
incredible.
Legendary lapsed fan.
Yeah,
we found you.
Yay!
It's cool to get that perspective though, of someone who was a fan, comes back for AEW, and I can definitely see how that would be a thing. And I think honestly, AJ and I were again kind of the same, where we didn't stop totally watching or following professional wrestling. We'd follow a little bit of New Japan here and there and stuff like that. Yeah, totally. But we had fallen out of watching weekly wrestling for a very long time until AEW, and now we're watching every week. So can definitely relate there as well.
Okay.
Let's talk some of the news from AEW this week. We've talked about it a little bit last week that we had heard John Silver was injured. We were unsure if it was a shoe injury. Our boy Johnny D was wondering that especially. Well, we have the information he's out for 4 to 6 weeks. Real unfortunate because of the kind of run he's been on right now, really gaining a lot of momentum. But he's kind of a good character worker, so I think we'll see him still make appearances on Dynamite. What do you think about this, Zevo?
Dude, so I watched that live, and same thing. I thought it was a work for sure. I was like certain that was a work. I'm like, man, he's really selling that shoulder injury. Heard about the real injury, and then I rewatched with my old coworkers, not live. Like I do some Discord streaming for them usually, and rewatching it, I was like, so here's where he dislocates his shoulder, and I was like, remember that for the rest of this match, he's working on a dislocated shoulder, and it's amazing the work he did. Even so, that was a great match. You guys said it on the pod. That was a great match, like all things considered, and at the time, I had no sense that was a real injury, and it's amazing to think of what he did. Even so, they're gonna miss him, obviously.
Definitely. I was kind of taken aback because again, it was such a good match. Like I had no idea. I thought he was just working it real good, psychology. But overall, I think it'll be fine because like 4 to 6 weeks. One, I think that's still. Do we have time before Double or Nothing? I don't know. You do the math if you want. But like I think he could still make that. And also, even if he's not on it, like he'll still be on Being the Elite. Like he'll still be around. It's John Silver. Like his popularity is not going to fade because of this. Because his popularity was built on doing this fun Being the Elite stuff. I got my cousin into Being the Elite. He doesn't watch Dynamite every week. He's really into the anime ass Dark Order shit. So I don't know, man. I think it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think they've been killing it with the vlogs, and probably even longer than lately. We've just been paying attention lately, but I kind of go back and forth with watching the vlogs a lot, and I'll binge watch like 6 of them at a time. And I think that they've just done such a magnificent job. And if you do take the time to watch them, you kind of just build a different bond for certain characters that you see on either the Sammy G vlog or what they do with Being the Elite. So I think those vlogs are great, and I think that's where Silver he's kind of shined on each of those platforms, especially BTE. So I think he'll be all right despite the injury.
Yeah, totally.
Tough break for him though. Someone that has been on fire and has recently upgraded their contract apparently is Red Velvet. We've been talking about her for a couple of weeks about how she's just kind of taken on a whole new fire behind her character, I guess, since being able to work with Cody and everything. And during some of her interviews and the segments they've done with her, they've mentioned that she wasn't signed under an official contract. That has since changed. She has now been upgraded to an official contract. Good signing, I would say.
Yeah, definitely good. I mean,
totally.
she's leaps and bounds getting better and better and better. It's like a Ty Conti situation to me, where it's like this person I didn't expect to be really good, but they definitely have the potential.
I love Red Velvet. It was funny to see early on. She just felt sort of like a random replacement for Brandy Rhodes, but she's like such developed into her own character. And I loved her segment on Elevation last week. Like those little Elevation segments about each wrestler are fantastic. And I know we're going to talk about Elevation, but I wish they hadn't buried Bear Country 2 hours into this broadcast this week. Oh my God.
Yeah, I agree that the video package they did for Red Velvet last week was something that really helped solidify what they've been doing with her, and we've seen it up until this point. They've been building her up, and I kind of agree that early on she just felt like, okay, we need a replacement for Brandy. Who isn't doing anything right now? Oh, we got Red Velvet. And since getting that opportunity has made 100% the best of it, really grown on me as a character, as a talent too. So I'm excited, especially for the women's division, as we add someone like Red Velvet to that division, who the crowd can now relate to a little bit more. We get to hear her story. It's always interesting, and this might just be a personal thing because I am, as a Latino wrestling fan, anytime I hear about someone liking Eddie Guerrero, feels like it just automatically adds a little bit more of an element to them. I don't know if that happens with every fan, but I feel like it does. I feel like you hear a lot of people fans of Eddie.
I can kind of agree.
So
I mean, Eddie transcends race. He's too good.
Oh man, totally.
for sure. But he's just like a legitimate. Like you hear it, and it makes sense. He influenced so many different people that it makes sense. But yeah, I think this is a good signing, good official signing. So good stuff. Let's talk about this house show they've got lined up. I'm curious what you guys think about the name and then the card for it. It's called AEW The House Always Wins. The card they have lined up is Darby Allin will be defending the TNT Championship. Cody Rhodes will take on Ethan Page. The Young Bucks will team up with Brandon Cutler to take on Pac, Phoenix, and Pentagon. And then in the main event, we got Kenny Omega teaming with Michael Nakazawa against the Sydal brothers. This main event is what really throws me off. But what do you guys think? Zevo, would you go to this card? Is this an interesting card to you? What do you think?
I'm really, really curious what's going to end up on YouTube from this, right? Because they've said they're not broadcasting it, but they have not said they won't show replays, right? It's not going to be live, they've said specifically. But I think the 20-man or whatever battle royale they're going to have that's going to determine who goes against Darby, that would be awesome at a house show.
Yeah.
There's some just random good sounding matches and people in action and all where I think they're going to like really do some crazy stuff. And people are going to talk about this, right? So it'd be awesome to be at the first one and be like, yeah, I was at the first house show. I think that's by far the biggest like thing to be excited about for people that are going to go. But I imagine whatever 2 or 3 matches are incredibly good, we're going to see on YouTube. Like, we've got to, I think.
I think so.
The
we'll
cruise,
see some
they put
highlights or
on
something
there,
like that.
you know?
Yeah.
I can explain this show very easily. Andrew, you know how you bully me for not going to AEW more?
Yeah, man.
This show ain't the one that's going to make me go.
You wouldn't go to this one? Zevo honestly has me convinced a little bit talking about just the historical purpose of this. I do think that they will want this to be a well talked about show, especially on that weekend, because it's the same weekend as WrestleMania, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. That's why they're running it. So I think they want it to be well discussed among the people that are in that area.
And it should be. So, it should be because, like, for instance, I was a house show kid. Like, they didn't do TV where I live. And TNA house shows fucking ruled. They were
That's what
awesome.
I think this is going to be.
Oh, yeah. I think they're going for that level for sure.
I agree. I 100% agree it's going to be a good show. I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't go because it's a house show. And, like, as a person who lives in Florida, like, because of that,
that's
like,
fair. If you're going to go, you might as well go to
Dynamite.
That's fair. But this is, and you bring up a great point with the Impact thing, I think, as well, because that immediately feels like what they're going with here, especially doing the 20-man battle royal. That's a lot of fun. The title match, everything, like Cody Rhodes versus Ethan Page is going to be a solid match. I'm not sold on Kenny teaming with Nakazawa to take on the Sydals, but the rest of the card I'm with. So and honestly, that will deliver in a way for people who are either fans of the Sydals, fans of Omega. I'm just a big anti-Michael Nakazawa guy. I can't get behind him, but it's still a good card.
Anything's better than his oil wrestling gimmick, right? This, like, I'm the friend of Kenny's and I'm his assistant or whatever. I'll take it. Like, if we don't have him pulling oil out of his underwear, I'm down.
I think he's gonna, though, is the problem.
I don't know. He played it straight against was that?
That's true. Against Matt Sydal.
Matt, right? He just did Matt Sydal. Yeah.
So if they're going that direction with Nakazawa, I can get behind him a little bit more because that baby oil gimmick is the one that just doesn't really fit for me, and
it's so dumb.
I agree, and I think they've finally caught on to that and recognized it just doesn't work with this audience. So I think that the house show is really interesting for sure. You at the very least you can't discredit that. Smart for them to take the opportunity and put this card together, especially with it being WrestleMania weekend. So for people who do get to go, I'm sure they will have a great time. Like, there's nothing about this that seems like it wouldn't be a lot of fun, and like they won't go out of their way to make it a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. One thing I will say is I think you're wrong. I think Tony Khan thinks the baby oil gimmick is funny, and he doesn't want a baby face doing it.
I don't know.
Like, I think this is like one of those, like, you know how we're like, oh, Vince McMahon's crazy, so that's why that's happening. I think that's why this is happening.
I was gonna say,
I think he's like, oh, that's the best shit.
That's his Vinceism is the baby oil thing. Maybe you're right. I don't know. Maybe I think he might still be doing it if that was the case. But you might be onto something. Let's go ahead and we'll start talking about Dark a little bit. We'll talk about our sleeper picks for tonight's AEW Dark, and then we could talk a little bit about the reception to Dark Elevation over the last couple of weeks, especially this most recent episode hasn't been as great. But before we jump into that, let's talk about our sleeper picks for this week's AEW Dark, some matches that for one reason or another we want to check out. Mine personal sleeper pick for this week is Team Taz teaming up to take on a group of jobbers, pretty much Chandler Hopkins, Sage Scott, and Jake St. Patrick. The reason I'm intrigued by this, obviously they're doing some storyline stuff with Team Taz. They did do a little bit last week on Dark between Cage and Starks, and maybe even the week before. Yeah, I think they've been doing this now 2 weeks on Dark. So I like what they're doing with this story, building up a little bit on Dark as well. So that's why I'm intrigued by this one.
Yeah, no, that's definitely going to be fun. Because there's clear dissension going on with Brian Cage and the rest of the group. One way or another, that something's going to come to a boil there. And not necessarily here, obviously, but we're going to get hints of it.
The slow build's been great for that too. That's like my more casual wrestling friends, if they listen to this, they might be upset with calling casual. I don't know. We'll find out. But they even caught the Cage stuff before the real obvious one on Dynamite, where it's like, oh, I think he's like turning on Team Taz, and it's great to see how well that story's playing out. You know, I think it's really on, and people are getting it, and they're gonna take their time. It looks like, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I agree with you. The slow build for this, and the way that they do stories too. You just never know. Like maybe Cage won't even officially turn. Maybe they will patch things up. Maybe you anticipate dissension and them to officially split apart, but maybe they come to some type of understanding throughout the weeks, because they don't just have one formula of building a story and stuff like that. So that's why I like this. That's why I want to check it out, especially because every little piece to an AEW story does add to something. You don't have to see it, but when you do see it, it just adds that element for you. So,
well, even Will Hobbs like joining Team Taz, that was one where I did not see that coming, and then it happened. I was like, oh damn, that's quite a team with Hobbs on it.
I agree, and that's where Team Taz has been great. Just the storylines that they've built up with this group, and bringing in Hobbs and now Cage potentially leaving, like two very good stories just within the group itself. They don't even have to feud with that many people outside of it. So,
yeah, totally.
AJ, what is your sleeper pick for tonight's AEW Dark?
Max Caster versus Alex Reynolds, and you know why? Do you know why, Andrew?
Just because you want to watch him lick some hands? I don't know.
That's you're damn right. Because I want to watch him lick some hands, and I'm gonna watch him lick some hands.
Oh
it's so weird, but it pops me. I love it, but I don't at the same time.
I hope Alex Reynolds doesn't stand for it. I hope he goes, no, not my hand, sir. I'm over it.
And you've seen there's been at least one talent I've watched on Dark where he just kind of rips his hand away at the very end, because he's like, all right, dude, you're enough. Like, I get this is your gimmick, but that's enough. So I like it. I'm with you. I've liked what they've done with Caster, giving him some time to shine on Dark especially, and whatever he is doing with that gimmick, it definitely catches people's attention. So
yeah.
It's very strange. Zevo, do you have a Dark sleeper pick? We might not have informed you about this. If you don't have one, that's fine.
Yes, we did.
AJ gave me the heads up. So I looked at the card. I had a few ones I liked on there, but I'm going with probably very few people's sleeper pick, which is Sonny Kiss versus Angelico. Okay. I saw Sonny Kiss for the first time in Boston, and when he came out, I was like, oh my god, this is incredible and amazing and ridiculous. And I loved his entire gimmick. I mean, he lost, but I was just like, this dude's great, and I love this. And him teaming with Joey's like kind of been, you guys are going to hate me, the only thing I've liked about Joey. And then Angelico, I hate the hybrid too. And you guys, I know, are also a little bit into the hybrid too, but Angelico, I love. I'm like, Angelico rules, but Jack is the most boring man in AEW. And he annoys the crap out of me.
That's why he's good.
He had a video package in this week's Elevation where he talked a bunch and it was boring. And then Angelico just started dancing, and he was like, there's no music playing. He's like, I hear it in here, man. And I'm just like, yes, Angelico's so much cooler.
That's great. And this is a solid pick, because I honestly don't know who's going to win on this one. Like on some Darks, you can kind of pick through the entire card and say, I know what's going to happen. I would anticipate a Sonny Kiss victory here, but I don't really know, especially the story they're kind of slowly building between him and Joey. Not necessarily sure how that's been going either, but yeah, I like that pick. That's a good pick. I'm interested because Sonny Kiss has been growing on me a lot over time, especially since pairing up with Joey Janella, as I'm a big Joey Janella fan. But even before then, Sonny Kiss was really cool. I actually got an opportunity to just go up and say what's up to Sonny Kiss during one of the StarCast events. He was outside with Nyla Rose. They were chatting and went and talked to him, and it was very cool. So it's very exciting to see, hopefully, a better trajectory for him going forward.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, I just real quick on Joey Janela, want to say I've just never seen him do good stuff, right? I feel like you guys say all the time AEW doesn't use him well. I've not seen him outside of AEW,
That's
right?
fair.
And
That is
I know I
completely
could go
fair.
on YouTube and watch some really cool Joey stuff, and I think him being an organizer for indie events, awesome. It sounds like he's done like great stuff for the wrestling scene. I just know his product in the ring on AEW, and it's not been exciting.
I can't argue with you much.
Exactly. I'm not gonna fight with that. I'm not gonna die on the hill that
I'm a
Joey Janela's been
huge Joey
doing.
Janella fan. I'm a huge Janella fan. Love the guy. Got to do an interview with him. Lots of great stuff. But it's tough what we've seen in AEW, especially over the last couple of weeks. But in general, he hasn't gotten a great opportunity to shine, especially outside of some of the hardcore stuff he's done. I don't necessarily blame AEW either, because unfortunately his character work just doesn't transition very well to a television audience at all. Yeah. And that's what has been really difficult, because at that point, like even if his in-ring work was amazing, it would be very hard to get over just how his promos and stuff come across sometimes. Mm-hmm. And his in-ring work does hurt at times, I think. So it depends.
I still love Elevation Joey. Video packages, not the ones where they give the people the full 2 minutes, but people are just doing little quick, video package behind the scenes work. They don't get more than like a minute or 90 seconds from my timing this stuff earlier. Mm-hmm. And I can see where Joey wants like more time to build and sort of play off his crazy persona and stuff. And you just can't get that over in a minute. Like, you can't.
Well, and a lot of his stuff really wasn't even so much talking. It was just the aesthetic and the vibe that you got of the video packages that he put together.
It was whoever I don't remember his name, but
he works for NXT
Giancarlo. He was a great DP. Like that's really the answer. He was doing beautiful, crazy
shots. Joey did great stuff too, but I think that they were a great unit, and so it's hurt Joey a little bit since they've separated in terms of being able to continue building on that. I still think he's a great star. Still love watching Joey, but I can't
Joey still has all the great ideas. He just he needs like the ability to see him out.
And I also think Joey is probably someone who, like, quite honestly, in terms of if we were to talk about mental health in wrestling, he might be someone who just is dealing with the blowback of social media, where for a long time he was just kind of an internet darling. He would get some hate on social media from people, but not nearly as much. Now, given this platform, he's got a lot more people who just don't necessarily like him and go on social media and go out of their way to say that. And I think that might have affected some of his work since then, because I remember early on in AEW he was talking about how he was hitting the gym, doing all this stuff, trying to do stuff. So I can understand, like, after a year maybe not getting the spot you want on the card, or maybe hearing constant blowback from legends in the business alongside people on social media. It might do a little bit to him. So I love Joey. Hope to see him do a little bit better, especially with Sonny Kiss and him looking to get a little bit of a storyline on Dark. So I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk, though, about this Dark Elevation a little bit. We've talked about it briefly, I think, last week. And last week we were talking more about how we thought they hit the nail on the head in terms of timing and stuff. This week the timing was quite a bit off in terms of what we were expecting. It was much longer. Zevo, you've done a little bit of data work with what they've put together on Dark, and you have a little bit of interesting tidbits for us. You want to give us that before we talk about the fans' reaction last night?
Yeah, so I'll say my subjective experience of these 3 episodes was I was psyched about episode 1 and thought a little over 2 hours was too much. Like, I really wanted, y'all had talked about it on the podcast, maybe hit 3 hours total between Elevation and regular Dark. I expected the same kind of thing. And when I saw 2 hours of this, I was like, well, then is Dark short? And then Dark wasn't short either. So I was kind of like, well, what are they doing? So then week 2, it being an hour and a half, I'm like, that feels right. That's what I expected from Elevation. And then tuned into this week's Elevation to see 2.5 hours of Elevation. And I was like, that's, a lot. With commercials, that would be that's a 3.5 hour practical, like, block of TV if there were, like, regular TV commercials and all. That's just a lot of wrestling, So I thought to myself, well, why does it feel different? Like, what feels weird about this, right? So looking at episode 1, you had 121-minute runtime. There were 13 matches with 105.5 minutes of, like, wrestling time for an average time of, like, 8 minutes a match. And I'll say the wrestling time's been pretty consistent, because, like, episode 2 had about 7.8 minutes of wrestling time a match, and, like, 8.15 for episode 3. So, like, the wrestling's been consistent. Now, the number of matches, it was 13 in episode 1, 10 in 2, and 16 matches in last night's Elevation. That's too much.
Yeah, that's too much.
And the other thing is the breakdown in genders is really interesting to me, because I thought when I finally watched week 1, that 2 hour block, I was impressed because it was 7 men's matches and 6 women's matches. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of, like, women getting featured in Elevation. Week 2, when it was shorter, they just cut 3 of the women's matches. So it was still 7 men's matches and then 3 women's matches. And then this week it was 11 men's matches and 5 women's matches. So like, I feel like, not that they need to be even, right? But just like, if you're going to save time, if they're going to cut 11 and 5 down, maybe cut like 3 of those men's matches down, right?
I agree.
Make it like 8 men and 5 women or something, you know?
That's a good happy medium, I think. And I think that it is just tough with so many matches, even if every match was, like, you can't have every match be a 5-star match because everybody would be worn out anyway. You couldn't do it every week. Like, you could just, so at that point, we are looking at probably a majority of, like, probably 13 at least of these matches just being kind of average. The other 3 getting an opportunity to go a little bit bigger. But at that point, you're sifting through 2 hours of, or maybe an hour and a half of average matches. And that's not to discredit these matches. They're not bad. Calling it average is just to say, like, there's nothing super spectacular about it outside of we're seeing a talent get to do what they do. But they're not going to go super crazy with it. So it is tough, especially as a consumer. Like, that's a lot to consume. That's a lot to take in. And a great point you made, Zivo, in mentioning, like, if this was a show with commercials, it would be 3.5 hours long. I think as wrestling fans, we're kind of built into thinking about a show with commercials built into it. At least for me, like, I think of Dynamite, it's a 2-hour show. Commercials are built into it. I didn't even take a second to think about these 2.5-hour shows, and I've obviously watched them, but I didn't think about they're not filled with commercials like you see on TV. So another great point, very interesting. What do you think about Go ahead.
I just want to say the real last thing I had for data was where they really break down, and where I think besides excessive amounts of matches, you really feel that these are slower, was episode 1. I call it videos in my stats here, but that was just I'm calculating the time of like in-ring promos after a match, people talking at the desk, actual video package work behind the scenes, and the the elevation segments for wrestlers, right? Episode 1, they had 6 of those for 11 videos total, so 11 minutes of time, which averaged out to about 1.8 minutes. And that's like a little on the long side when you've got like 8-minute matches, right? So like a quarter of the length of a match per video that they were running. Episode 2 had 8 videos, which is a lot, but only 7.5 minutes total time for less than a minute of video. And that felt really good to me. Like the pace of those videos in episode 2 felt like pretty consistent and didn't take up too much of the time. Episode 3, 6 videos again for 14 minutes.
Wow.
For 2.33 minutes per video. Like, that's too much. I'm glad people are getting more time, and again, we're building the talent. Like, that's a really important thing in elevation and what they're going for. But you got to edit that stuff down somewhere. Like,
and I wouldn't even say it's too much. I say it's more of a problem of balancing it with the matches. Like, you can do that if the matches are set up differently.
Yeah.
But they felt like they dragged to me, and I think some of those could have had a second take. They could have done a second take and just gotten them a little more concise.
And are these generally like promos or like video packages? Like, see, for me, like if it's about a minute and a half backstory, like say the stuff we got with Scorpio Sky, the stuff we got with Red Velvet, I really like those, even if they're a little bit lengthier. But I can agree that at a point I kind of do tune out of what's going on and maybe jump back in, especially if it is like 2 to 3 minutes long. If it's a promo going that long, I really can't give it too much attention unless it's someone like MJF or something who's talking about something I actually really maybe not agree with, but I care about. So it is tough.
If you guys didn't watch, I think because both of you said you didn't see all of Elevation this week yet, there was a moment where Miro and Kip come out and they end up like getting chased around backstage and then like emerging again and stuff. And that was like a 30-minute, I think, promo. And it was cute, and there's some funny bits to it, but come on. Like I like the story that they're building and all that, and there's some neat stuff, but that's just too much. I want wrestling. Like, I'm watching this to watch wrestling.
I agree with you. I agree 100%. So, and I think that this has kind of been the take from a lot of people, because I saw it on social media last night more than ever. I got home from work. Like I said, didn't have a chance to catch the show yet, but I had saw quite a few people on social media who are generally just positive about AEW, and they weren't ever really negative about it last night either, but they were like, this is just too much for me. Between this and Dark and Dynamite, the only thing I can guarantee I'll watch is Dynamite, because this is just too much. And I can almost relate to some of those fans, because I say almost because I like what you see on Dark, or even being the Elite and the extra stuff you get from tuning into those shows, but I can still relate in terms of this is 6 hours now of wrestling, and some weeks it's like 30 matches just on Dark and Elevation before we even get to Dynamite. It's a lot. I could only imagine booking this, like being Tony Khan and having to write out the 30 matches you're going to run that week.
And we've got another night of TNT AEW coming sometime this year, right? So like,
yeah,
I just can't even.
And a reality show.
Right. Like, and I'm with you, by the way, AJ, that I'll probably watch for sure the first one and maybe 3 or 4 after that. And I doubt it's going to hold my attention past that point. But I want to see what it's about. I want to be able to talk about it at least,
Me too. And I think that it's just very interesting because, again, the TNT show, are they going to run 4 shows at that point? We obviously don't know what the new TNT show would be, so maybe it's not even a wrestling-centric show. Maybe they do something else. But it is, at that point, again, we're looking at, 4 shows of AEW. Feels very, very just almost oversaturated, and you appreciate it to an extent of you want to learn the talent, and maybe they'll draw back on it a little bit when there's more independent wrestling going on, and some of these talent can just do stuff like that, or maybe even go on excursions to other countries and stuff like that. But right now, it's just so much, and as a fan, for it to just be one company, like this is the one time where I feel very WWE-esque when they had Raw, SmackDown, ECW, like just so much you had to consume in a week. Like there's so much of this that you
they
have
still
to consume.
do, but
yeah, I agree. But that's what almost makes this harder is if you're trying to catch any other promotion alongside AEW. You got your work cut out for you, and I know plenty of people who do catch every bit of Dark and Elevation and Dynamite and everything, and I think even those people would say, it would be nice if we changed the format of one of these shows. Make Dark Elevation or Dark just feel a little bit different. So,
I'll say I wouldn't even mind if Elevation was more like mostly promos and video packages and like getting the wrestlers over and their stories over and all that, and have sprinkled with incredibly good tape matches, right? Mm-hmm. Like if it was more of that, like this was the story building episode where we're like, we're taking these younger talent, we're giving you their stories, we're giving them a chance to like build their characters out some more and see them wrestle and do awesome. Like that would differentiate it so much more from Dark than what they're showing now, which is Dark plus some stuff. It's not otherwise really, I mean, who's going to win almost every single match in Elevation, right? Like you hear who's announced for it. It's like the winners are pretty obvious.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's really just Dark plus because it's Dark with the big names. It's what Dark was in the beginning, really.
Yep.
And there's no significant. If it was like 90 minutes every week and it was just featuring young people and putting them over and doing hype videos, that would be one thing. Like that second week, but I don't know. It seems like they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I agree that it seems like they're trying to figure it out. It's just a strange thing that to be trying to figure this out when we kind of watched them try and figure out Dark. They figured out what Dark was, and then just kind of almost it's like a copy and paste, but they want to change a couple of different things. Otherwise, it still feels essentially the same. So I would love to see them just change the format of it a little bit. For sure.
I'll say I'll give Elevation props this week. That my biggest complaint from week 1 and 2 was it just started with wrestling. Like it just went right into a wrestling match. And both times I was like, did I miss something? Like did I accidentally skip some of it? That was just how it started. And I made YouTube comments to that effect and got a ton of people like agreeing with me. So I don't think I was the only one. There is a title sequence this week and a theme song. And I was so hyped for like finally, and they went from that into the desk and they were talking and introducing the show to you, and then it went to wrestling. And I was like, hey, it's almost like a real wrestling show now.
Yeah.
And then it was 2.5 hours long. So
yeah, just a little long still. And I think that again is something they're working out, and I will be shocked if they keep it at that point, especially with just the feedback that they've gotten on social media. And if they do shorten it down, cut down some of the matches, I hope they can, like you suggested, Zevo, cut down some of the men's matches. Give us more of the, like, I like what we've got right now with the women really seeming to be featured a lot more, especially since the incarnation of Elevation. So let's keep that up rather than cutting it down because we want to save time. We can make it work.
One last quick stat, because I made a note of this. Week 1 and week 2 ended with women's matches, and week 3 ended with a men's match. But like I was hyped both times to like, there's 15 minutes left, and I'm like, oh, there's a women's match. I wonder what the men's match is that ends this. But it was a 15-minute women's match week 1 and week 2, and I was like, hell yeah. And like, that's awesome. Like that just doesn't happen enough. So
I agree, and I think I really, like I said, I didn't catch much of Elevation, but I saw something on social media. It looks like Thunder Rosa has a bit of a storyline building on there.
Yes.
So that's very cool as well. So I like that.
Again, I liked so much of it, but that Thunder Rosa video package is another one that was inching towards 3 minutes, and it just her bit of it was great.
I thought it was fine.
I liked it again. I liked so much of the episode. Everything felt just like the tiniest bit too long or too much.
Yeah, and it's gonna feel that way, especially when it is just that long. Like if you cut one package in like 2 matches or 3 matches, you probably don't even feel that way about most of it feeling that lengthy at that point. But yeah, I think they're figuring it out, and they will continue to figure it out. But I still enjoy it, and I appreciate them going through the effort of featuring independent talent, featuring the talent that they do have, giving you a chance to connect with some of the talent, and it definitely helps with the win-loss record thing that they try to present with an AEW as well. So I gotta give them credit for that. Let's talk about Dynamite, what they've got on the slate for this week, and what we think about it. Let's start off with something we talked about briefly a little bit with Miro and Kip Sabian taking on Chuck Taylor and Orange Cassidy in the Arcade Anarchy match. What do you think this is going to be like, Zevo? You think they're going to have a bunch of video game machines set out upside the ring and crashing them through them, or what?
I would love to see like bowling alley arcade set up. Like they've been filming in that what looks like a bowling alley arcade, right? With just a few random driving games and claw machines and shit like that. I'd love to see them just have a room set up like that and just smash like almost the cinematic match, like just smashing the shit out of the arcade cabinets. That would be great. I want to see that. I was gonna say I want to see it, but like Booker T and Austin. Hell yeah.
Exactly.
But, no, I was a little sad in the commentary this week that neither Paul nor Tony knew what to call an arcade cabinet when they were trying to describe what had happened at that Dynamite, and the arcade cabinet got wrecked, and they were just like, was this what do you call it, like a video game machine, right? Something. And I think Paul was all like, yeah, I think that was closer to him than his girlfriend or something. And I was like, all right, look.
Jeez.
But, I don't know. I'm sensitive to gaming stuff being in the games industry, I guess, but still, I was like, come on, guys.
Nah, you're good, man. I understand that. And this match is interesting for sure. And especially like Orange Cassidy and Chuck Taylor have a reputation for themselves now, having that great match with Proud and Powerful many months ago. I don't know if I'm anticipating it to be of that level, obviously, but you never know. I don't think we were going into that match thinking much of it, and then we got something that people were writing about for weeks, so who knows?
Yeah. I just want to double down. I want to see them throw air hockey pucks at each other, skee balls, to play throw them into the hoop in the basketball game. I want all the craziness.
Again, a cinematic match in an arcade would be incredible, and I don't think that's what we're getting on Dynamite, but I would be so in for that.
I don't think so either, but yeah,
whoever has the most tickets at the end of the match wins.
And we'll see what happens with Miro and Kip in this match too, because it don't seem like Miro is going to be helping Kip Sabian much. At least that's what I've taken away from some of their promos. So who knows? I mean, maybe he'll let Kip get beat up for a little bit and then just come take care of business at the end. But we'll see. Interesting story going on there as well. We will see Hikaru Shida team up with Tay Conti to take on Nyla Rose and the Bunny. So this should be fun. I'm officially all in on Tay Conti, especially now seeing that they Tay Conti has just always felt like a enhancement talent, even in NXT. She never really got much of an opportunity to be the star, and you could tell why, because she was just a little bit newer to the business, learning the ropes, you could say. Now she's really getting an opportunity, so I'm all in on this match. Very excited. I was shocked last week, so I'm all about it. What do you think, Zevo?
I'm really psyched with Tay Conti generally. Like, I'm impressed. She's so physical and has such great athleticism, right? And what I've seen of her in AEW and watching her from the earliest dark stuff she was on, and I loved her and Anna Jay together. That was such a cool relationship they had. But what I've really been impressed with Ty is her storytelling is getting so good. She's getting so much better at selling what's happening in the match, both just all the emotions. And I mean, that was the big thing in that Nyla Rose match for me, was you just saw how passionate she was, and that I fully expected her to lose, so her winning was incredible. But regardless, she looked great that whole match and really sold everything, both on offense and getting hit, and just there's still clearly some greenness in her ability to interact and do certain moves, but she's getting there, and telling a good story with your wrestling to me matters so much more than everything else, and she's really starting to get the storytelling down.
For sure. Just to add to that, with that said, I'm sold on Taynara Conti. She's great. You don't need to sell me anymore. And I already know Nyla Rose is good, and I know Hikaru Shida is amazing. To me, the person to watch in this match is the Bunny. That's who my eyes are going to be on, because I really want to see how she does against all these great women. Because we haven't seen her as much, or I haven't. Maybe she's been on Dark. I don't watch Dark all the time.
I've been bummed that Allie's not been on more. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm super interested, and I like the gimmick. I like the evil bunny gimmick. Like it works. Donnie Darko, cool. Let's do it. But like, I'm really curious to see how she does. I expect it to be a good match regardless, but I think like people should recognize the spotlight's kind of on her.
Yeah, I didn't really think about that initially, but you are right, especially as they kind of introduced her last week to being more than a manager, and she has been introduced as that in the past, but she kind of slid more into this managerial role. So now that she comes out and is really just being a professional wrestler again, it's very interesting, and I think you're right, AJ. All eyes should be on her, and really Hikaru Shida's the one in this that is the vet that we'll be looking to sort of make sure everything stays well. But you're right, AJ. We've seen a lot of growth from Taynara Conti and Nyla Rose over the last year, especially where you don't have as much worry as we may have had early on. So I think it's great. I think this is a solid women's tag team match, and I hope that they're going to continue doing cool stuff with Tay, and who knows, the Bunny could do some exciting stuff as well. Let's talk about the next match. Cody Rhodes taking on QT Marshall in an exhibition match. Don't sound like there's going to be any records attached to this. I think QT is going to be pissed off. What do you think?
Yeah, he's going to be. He should be. He's like, I'm not going to hit you with my finish or tap you out. I'll let you win, baby boy. Smooches. Like, fuck you.
They're
no,
best
I hope
friends,
QT
dude.
kicks his ass.
I've had a theory for this. I think I've said it in numerous places. I want to be right about this. That I think, like, regardless, I think QT could lose even still. Like I don't know, but I think regardless, he's definitely going to beat on Cody's arm and shoulder, right? Like, obviously, because they sold that injury so hard in last week's Dynamite. Oh, I'm in the cast and I can't really do stuff, and so obviously he's going to beat on Cody. I think Arn as ref is going to step in to try to like break it up when he thinks it gets dirty, and I think QT is going to murder Arn Anderson. Like, I think he's going to go hard on Arn. Now, Arn can't take bumps, is my understanding, right? So like,
I don't think so.
They're going to have to be real careful in how they do it, but that's the story. I think if you want to get QT over as a heel, he has to murder Arn. And if QT is going to become like a top tier heel in the company, they need heels. Having the whole Dark Order go face screwed the balance of everything. Yeah. And I think if you want everybody to hate QT, murder Arn. That just, I think, tells the best story. We'll see if they do that, though.
I agree, and I personally think they should have him in the turnbuckle and just punch him until he's like sitting down and then stomp on him.
Sure.
And then there you go. He doesn't have to take a bump, and you beat the shit out of him.
Yeah. But I mean, him being the ref, I'm just like, there's no way Arn's the ref, and that doesn't have some relevance in the story,
For
obviously.
Sure.
I could see it almost going the opposite way, and I would especially see it going the opposite way if it wasn't for the introduction of the Pinnacle last week. But I feel like QT might get paired up with Arn. I feel like Arn might turn heel on Cody in some way, shape, or form in this and become QT's manager. I don't necessarily think QT needs a manager, but I also don't think Cody needs Arn in his corner. So maybe Arn just has taken up issue with Cody at times, just going into business for himself within some of their matches, not listening to Arn as much at times. That's happened a couple of different times. I think I'm more off than you are, Zevo. I think I would be more shocked if what I say happens, because I think you're more right than I am. But I could see it happening with QT being paired with Arn and having Arn be his manager. But I also could very well see the attack as well.
That's somewhat. They've had Arn do the slight heel turn because he came out with the Four Horsemen salute that time, right? So there was that. Plus, I could see Cody saying, "I'm not going to do all my moves and I'm not fighting to win." That could piss Arn off, like in the story, right? Yeah. So this legit could make sense to me of like they've been wanting Arn to go heel anyway, and so have Arn be a heel manager. That would absolutely work. So
my idea going into this was what Zevo said, but now that you said that, you've kind of swayed me.
Like, have Arn murder Cody. Like, actually have Arn just be like, Cody, why didn't you do anything? Like, I'm never working with you again, and just go at his arm and shoulder. Like, they could do that. Definitely do that.
Yeah, so that's where I'm definitely intrigued regardless with what they've got going on here. And this, every time we talk about QT, I'm pretty sure I mention it. This is why you guys should tune into the vlogs sometimes if you get a chance, because that's why I'm just so much more invested in what QT has going on. Because what he did on Sammy Guevara's vlog over like 3 months, I think, maybe even longer, with Fuego del Sol just slowly building up and it was a character completely different of what we saw in QT on TV because he was just a total douchebag. But then you knew when he was going to do it on TV, it would work because it was so perfect on the vlog. So, and they built it up really well. It made so many people interested in that match. So that's why I encourage you guys to check out the vlogs if you can, because they do go a long way in just adding a little bit more to those characters that you might not feel as much about initially. If you take a second, you might. So
you guys got me watching BTE because I had avoided it for the longest time. And then because I would watch it and just be like, this is so dumb. Like, especially early in AEW, I think they were all too busy to do BTE, justice. And then for COVID, it got so good over COVID. I started when I started listening to your podcast, you guys would talk about BTE. So I started making myself watch BTE, fell in love with it, and then went back and watched old BTEs too. Because like the stuff like Cody being possessed, like Twin Peaks style. I was just like, what is going on here? I wanted to find that story, so I went and watched all the ones of Cody getting possessed and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's Sammy's vlog was another one I watched like back around the Jericho Cruise time and all that, and was just kind of like, because he was like, oh, I'm gonna be on the vlog, and you watch my vlog, and it was like, but you keep talking about it, which means I'm probably at some point gonna finally watch it and try and catch up on old ones. So
it's definitely, I don't know what it was like back then, but it's definitely shifted a little bit more to just being like BTE where it's like a skit type show. So I think they do a great job with both of them. I think BTE is great. They did a phenomenal job. I haven't even caught this week's yet, but last week's when I watched it, I actually had to go back and find some older episodes to watch, kind of similar to you, just because I knew that they had built up the Hangman Page story that they finally blew off with Matt Hardy telling them, oh, I'm the one who sent you that text message. They've done so many different things on BTE that you're like, oh my god, this is an amazing story. And last week's was really amazing, so they do a great job with those as well. AJ, let's talk about Christian Cage making his AEW debut versus Frankie Kazarian. What do you think?
Genius. It's a proven banger winner of a match. It's a great way if you want to do this workhorse gimmick with Christian Cage. That's a great opponent for him. And I think that's the point of this match. I think the point of this match is, like, by and large, show that Christian Cage can still go and that he can put on a really good match. And that's what we're going to see, a really good match. This is something where the match quality is what it lives and dies on to me, because this is going to be proving to the world that Christian can still go, or maybe he can't. I don't know. But I expect that he can. And I expect that even if he couldn't, Frankie Kazarian wouldn't have a problem like making this match at work.
Mm-hmm. No, it's two workhorses, right? Like two workhorses is like always a fantastic match. I've not heard, Christian Cage was on WWE not terribly long ago, right? I thought he was at the Rumble. I don't want to get all into talking WWE, that Rumble. But I love the women's stuff. The women's stuff was incredible in that Rumble. And but no, Christian Cage, like, he can still wrestle, right? So this should be great. Kaz is fantastic. I think, obviously I love Scorpio first seeing SCU and all that, and the way they brought Scorpio into the tag team and made him part of the championship and all, I thought was really cool. But Kaz was always the dude where I'm like, man, this guy's really good, And then, like, the longer this has gone on, the more I'm just like, no, Kaz is incredible. And he's legit one of those people, I think, that just makes everybody else look better. And, I think regardless of how good Christian Cage is, he's going to look better wrestling Kaz the first time, for sure.
Absolutely. And again, like, I can't say, they've had great ass matches before. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that this is going to be one of them.
Yeah, I think I'm like, my expectations are pretty just limited for this one, just because it is just a regular Dynamite TV match. But I think that's where it could surpass my expectations. Where when it finishes, I'm like, yeah, Christian does still have it. Like, this was an amazing signing. This makes all the sense in the world. If it is just kind of like and that's what's great about Christian, is you feel like it's probably going to be more than just an average TV match. I don't even know how, like, in my brain I can't vision how they go about this being more than just an average TV match, but I feel like in watching it, I will have that moment of like, this is it, they're doing it. So and again, I guess maybe my expectations are a little high in that aspect, because maybe they don't go above and beyond what I'm expecting, but I do kind of think so. I think Christian he's looking to make a point, prove a point here. Kazarian is great, like you guys said, he makes everybody look amazing, so fantastic opponent to start off against Christian. I like what they're doing, and who knows where they'll go after it. So because there's so many different storyline aspects you could do with Christian right now. So
yeah. And like, I if they don't do a storyline thing here, I won't be surprised because I feel like this might just be like to prove a point that he can go.
Type thing. Yeah.
Well,
sure.
I mean, it seems they've been teasing Christian versus Kenny, right? I mean, that seems like where it's going.
Yeah.
Although I don't expect Kenny to lose. I mean, I think Kenny's got to collect quite a few belts before he starts losing them, and I think he's getting the Impact belt. Like I'm actually going to watch my first Impact pay-per-view to hopefully see Kenny win that belt. So
yeah, and that'll be that, and that's what they've done great with that storyline. I agree that I think Kenny makes the most sense for who Christian's going after first. I just hope, and I'm leaving myself open of the potential that they go with my idea of letting All Ego Ethan Page destroy Christian for taking all of his shine since he's come in. They both debuted at the same time, and a man with the name of All Ego should not be okay with this old man coming in and taking all of his limelight. That's all I'm saying.
For sure.
He should
I would love that
definitely
feud.
be pissed off. But I understand why they want to do Kenny versus Christian, though. So.
AJ, should I tell Andrew my terrible fantasy booking?
No, you should. Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so I've had this theory since Revolution, which is I think do you like Page v Cage or the double Cage Page?
I like the double.
Okay, so I think we're gonna have to have Hangman Page and Hangman Page, Brian Cage versus Ethan Page and Christian Cage in a Page Cage match where they somehow need to break out of the cage with books, and then Leva Bates feeds them books to use pages to get out of the cage. Now, I don't think, considering Tony Khan thought teleportation was too silly, I don't think we're going to see something quite that silly, but I would love a Cage Page v Cage Page and a Cage Page match.
Cage Rage in a Cage and a Page. I like it, dude.
Yep.
Let's get Tony Khan on the line and get it booked.
Somebody needs to make this happen.
I especially appreciate getting Leva Bates involved because it just makes sense.
Pages, man. You got to have pages.
It just makes sense. That's perfect. I love it.
Maybe she's the rep. Maybe she's the rep.
Dude, that's even better. She's the rep. She's got the books.
Yeah.
I'm with it. I love Leva Bates too, by the way. She's someone that I also got to see at StarCast. She was a wonderful person. So.
And that was the first thing in Boston, right? It was the Librarians coming out, and I knew nothing about anything, right? And I'm just like, there's a heel whose gimmick is shushing everyone. I am 100% in this promotion from the first thing I've seen because I love heels, and I'm just like, I start doing the shush, and my friends are like, no, you don't do that. You're like, I told them, I'm like, I'm gonna root for every heel all night long, so just get used to it.
Nice, love it.
Yeah.
I don't know if this will be the main event, but the last match that they've announced for this week's Dynamite, Jon Moxley will be taking on Cesar Bonini. This is an interesting match because Tony Khan felt the need to make it after Moxley had a pretty dominating victory, I guess, on Dark Elevation against like a bigger talent, I would say. Now, up once again being paired up against a bigger talent. The cool thing about how Tony Khan had put this together was he had just mentioned that Cesar is someone he wants to take an extra look at. So I thought it gave him a little bit of a rub from the boss. So interesting match.
Definitely. And it'll make Jon Moxley good for the same reason it made Page look good. He's a big dude. Like, you beat a big dude, you look better.
Yeah.
And I like the Bonini angle with Peter Avalon, the whole Pretty Peter's pageant provocation. I think that's right. That was also silly and fun. And he reminds me of the Continental, the old Christopher Walken bit from SNL. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm not.
Sorry, 90s SNL stuff. I know it's, again, old man. But he had a little bit where it was like a POV camera, and he was all like, "Oh, come in. Oh, let me have some champagne," and all this kind of stuff. And so he's this goofy, over the top, luxurious, trying to hit on people kind of character. And I'm just like, Pretty Peter Avalon is 100% just doing that, and I love it. Like, it's great. But Caesar is a real cool looking guy. Definitely has that monster kind of vibe that just
presence.
Big dude. Yeah. And I think him and Moxley should have a fun match for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's a good spot for him, and I think you're right with the Peter Avalon stuff. Has just kind of helped him. It's kind of helped Peter Avalon to incorporate Cesar and who else? He's got Dolph Ziggler's brother with him too, right?
Ryan Nemeth.
Ryan Nemeth. Yeah, so I mean, he's been able to incorporate some people with him, and I guess maybe Nemeth might not even still be a part of it, as he's gotten JD Drake on his side. I don't know; it's a lot to keep track of, but It is cool what they've done with Avalon because it's sort of helped him, helped Bonini, it's helped both of them just become a little bit more than what they were when they were separate. So they've sort of struck on something there, even if it is a little bit silly and not as serious as you might expect. Probably going to be a good match with Moxley. I'm expecting sort of the same thing as we got last week with Hangman. But maybe he gets a little bit more of an offense in than he got last week. That's the only thing I might be expecting. But it is Mox,
I would hope
so Who knows?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I feel like they're probably going to give him. So if he wants to take another look at him, that would imply he wants him to do at least a few more moves, I assume.
You never know. Maybe he just wants to see how good he could take a paradigm shift.
That's true.
So,
Yeah.
might be a 30-second match.
I loved watching all the guys working with Sting, who you just know as kids, they just dreamed of like ever getting to wrestle with Sting, and then every time like Sting beat him down, I'm like, this is childhood fantasies like coming true, you know?
Yeah, man. Exactly. And I imagine we'll see some Sting on this week's card. I haven't seen anything officially announced, but I might have just overlooked it. But he's been a big part of Dynamite the last couple of weeks, so I expect so. Probably him and maybe some Darby Allin video packages or something. But Dynamite looks good this week. Nothing too crazy, nothing too out of this world, but I think that might be where the Arcade Anarchy and Christian Cage matches really get an opportunity to stand out. And whatever they're going to do with Cody and QT, I anticipate being interesting. So, yeah, interesting card this week for sure. And we're like 2 months out from Double or Nothing, it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of time.
I really like the recent taping schedule where they do the Wednesday night live show and then tape Thursday for the next Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And I feel like almost universally those Thursday tape shows have been just fantastic. Like the final Dynamite product, which I never thought I would be like, I can't wait for the tape show.
Right.
But like the final Dynamite product is so good. But this last Wednesday was one where I felt like was one of their best ever live shows in terms of the camera cutting, and like they did so much that just really like you saw all the big hits, which sometimes I'm just like, how did you guys miss that hit? Like that was such a cool move, and you picked the worst possible camera angle to show that move off. But the tape shows that basically never happens, you know, because they have all the footage and can cut together the best stuff.
And the business is just so different right now compared to like, because I don't see these spoilers for these shows on the general dirt sheet sites. You can find them on Reddit, I'm pretty sure, if you want to look for them and you want to find them, but they're not there and easy to access the way you could find any WWE product that was taped easily because it was just being reported on. I don't know if maybe it's some payola AEW's letting all these sites know, hey, just don't post it and we'll kick back a little bit of money, or if it's just a respect thing of the product that they're really not trying to spoil it. But it's an interesting thing I've noticed, because I know that they do taped shows, but I also don't know that they do taped shows, because as far like I don't ever see any spoilers. I knew about it in the past where there was some stuff, but yeah, it's very cool how they're managed to still keep it relatively under wraps despite the fact that they keep it taped. So
I can only tell when it's taped because I can look outside my window and go, oh, that's a different light.
Yeah, for me, it's just like I always look for that live in the corner if I forget which week we're on, you know, because they don't put the live up on the taped weeks. But no, the product just feels great to me. Like I think they really
agree.
They spend the extra time editing for those tape shows, and it to me it shows as somebody who's really sensitive to those like bad camera angles and just missed moments. Like, and they feel like they cut all the fat out too. Like I really feel like it's just all the best stuff ends up in the episode, and it just is a solid 2 hours. You know.
Yeah, I think you're right, and honestly, it wasn't something that I had necessarily thought about, but you're 100% right. I think that those shows do stand out. It's not something that I had, again, thought about, but when you bring it to my attention, I can't argue with it at all, because those have been the shows that you're like, oh, shit. So, that wraps it up. I think we've covered everything AEW this week, unless we're missing anything. AJ, what? You see, there you go. Well, what? Well, it's the big show.
NXT is officially moving to Tuesday.
This is... We won? Is that it? Is that we're celebrating?
I have to say something about it, right?
There we go.
So are they doing that to hurt Impact? Like, I wonder, because like now they're just...
No, Impact's moving to Thursday.
Oh, I didn't even hear that. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Which
okay.
Is interesting. I mean, if you're a wrestling fan and you want to catch it all, like I wish I was still like younger and didn't have any responsibilities and could
have a baby.
Yeah, and I could just watch all this stuff every night. That would be wicked. But unfortunately, I can't. But I am glad, we've talked about it plenty of times, that if NXT did switch, maybe we'd get a chance to be able to catch it. So I am optimistic about that. If there's some cool stuff going on in NXT, maybe I'll check it out. But it is cool for AEW to now be able to run unopposed, at least in terms of another professional wrestling product. I think there has been some talk about how hockey will be on USA on those nights. Not sure how the hockey NXT fandom transitions over, but I think we'll be seeing a bigger number for AEW in the coming weeks, and that's pretty cool. So, and it's cool. It's cool overall for wrestling fans, as we've said 1,000 times, because if you want the opportunity to watch both of them, now you will have it. So, and
yeah, I think they'll both have better ratings too. You know.
Yeah, they definitely will.
They should. I don't know totally what to expect for NXT, because you're transitioning into a different day. People have to then switch over from Wednesdays to Tuesdays, that type of thing. I think for AEW, it's like a guaranteed, here you go, you're going to get a bump. Now, who's to say if it's going to be hundreds of thousands or just 100,000, but we'll see. They'll definitely see an uptick in the ratings, and that's cool for them. Great for them. Glad you brought it up, AJ. It wasn't really that big of a deal to me, but, we won, right? That's the gimmick. That's the social media gimmick.
Yeah.
I get it.
So, you love to see it.
It was never. It was.
I
never
appreciate
a
you
war.
guys never making a big deal out of the ratings war in the podcast, because I see it from time to time, and I'm just like, I don't care. Like the show's good, right? Tony Khan's got the money to keep it going, and
as long as the ratings are good enough to make TNT happy, I'm a happy boy.
Exactly.
Was my next sentence out of my mouth is, if TNT's happy, we still have Dynamite for as long as we want it, right? So it seems like they're plenty happy.
Exactly, and that's exactly where I'm at. And you could never really call this one a war. I get it. As fans, we 100% wanted it to be, because you look back to the glory days of that was the best time in professional wrestling, when both companies were pushing each other to go better and better every week, and there was actually like a war in ratings. This was never that, and I think fans really caught on to that quick. I think most fans, not every fan, because like you said, you still probably will see it all the way up until the final week of certain fans arguing and certain fans acting like it's the end of the world. But it's funny to me. It's all funny.
Yeah.
There we go, though. AJ covered me on terms of stuff that I didn't think about talking about. I think we got everything wrapped up. Zevo, we appreciate you joining us this week, man. It was a great conversation. Great to have you on board, chatting with us, getting another perspective and what's going on in AEW. So we appreciate you for sure, man. You got anything else you want to say before we wrap things up?
No, I love this. I've been wanting to do podcast stuff. Like, I listened to a billion podcasts, and I got a new mic mostly just in time for this. Like, it was already thinking about podcast stuff, but yeah, like, my setup's here, and I have pretty good availability. So you guys ever want to guest host, like, I'm available. So
for sure, man. We'll definitely be in touch, because this was a good episode, good conversation. Yeah. It's always nice to add on another voice into the conversation. Like I said, just another perspective and things going on. So you got a social media handle anywhere they could find you, check you out, what you got going on?
Yeah, my two big ones. My Twitter is Zevo1979. Again, the Twitter handle that won me a figure, and I'm also on Twitch at Zevo Bolus. That's where I do my VTubing Twitch stuff, and usually I'm a dragon, but wrestling, and I started as a Luchador Hulk, so I'm a Luchador Hulk again. So there you go.
Nice. Well, we appreciate it, man. AJ, let them know where to find you, and we could get out of here, my brother.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at AJ the Fitzy.
See, dude, you're just streamlined. You got it so perfect. then we got me. You can find me on Instagram at Andrew Kazarian, on Twitter at 2SweetElite. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/AllElitePod, YouTube at youtube.com/AllElitePodcast. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, brother. We're on Twitter at All Elite Podcast. We will be back on Thursday to discuss AEW Dynamite and everything the fallout of everything we just discussed today. Until then, thank you guys for tuning in with us. See ya.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
You're tuned in.
All I see is marks and